Here we go, Thursday, November 15th, Sports Bet Betting Insight today. Paulie and Teddy, SBRpicks.com. All the betting news you need to know in less than 20 minutes. I'm at Real Sports Bet on Twitter. He's at Teddy_covers. The four marquee games as we see it in college football coming up. Not the best schedule. Next week's off the hook. But we'll get to the marquee matchups game day at South Central, UCF, Central Florida, and Cincinnati. And we'll get to Notre Dame and Syracuse coming up in a 7:30 game Pacific time on ESPN. Bad beats, bad bets, bad for the books. Some bad bets. Yesterday here in Vegas at William Hill, 100,000 on the Pelicans and 100,000 on Buffalo. Pelicans were getting blown out. They lose by 7. And imagine if you had 6 figures on Buffalo. They go up 7-0 and then get run out and get beat 52-17, Teddy.
Which is why, again, people like to focus. And something has happened with sports betting getting legalized across the country. All of a sudden, the biggest bets are news stories. Someone with a lot of money that likes to bet doesn't make them a good bettor, doesn't make them savvy. And certainly $100,000 last night on a pair of wrong sides each shows that pretty clearly.
That was not Duffelbag Boy, by the way, either. Heat nets under 219 down to 214, 120-107. Heat get a big win. This was flying under and then exploded. It was a weird night in the NBA. The Bucks lost at home. They were up 8 in the fourth quarter. They were down 15 in the third. The Raptors were up 11 in the fourth quarter, led by 17 at one point and got beat by Detroit. The Jazz lost by 50 in Dallas. Spurs got run out in Phoenix. And the Lakers have a winning streak, and LeBron was Superman, 44, 10, and 9. But Bucks Grizzlies under 216 down to 212.5, no good. Lakers under 227 to 223, no good. Duke over 150 up to 157, all losers.
Yeah, and so there was a bad beat to talk about as well. Jared Drew tweeted at us about it. He said, at Teddy covers. Spurs-Suns game was at 209 with 2:48 to play. The over was 213. Lands 212. 3 points in almost 3 minutes. Ouch. Would you consider this horrific beat? I don't consider it a horrific beat. It was a tough beat, no question about it. A bad beat if you had the over in that ball game. Good thing it worked out for me, Jared says. Sportsbet, best show on the tube. We appreciate the comments and appreciate the tip on what was certainly a tough beat for over bettors if you had San Antonio and Phoenix over the total. But if you had the Spurs, that was about as wrong side as it gets. No show from San Antonio at Phoenix. Not what we expect from a Greg Popovich team.
Bad for the books. Duke 23 up to 26. Another blowout win. Easy win from 25 down to 20-1 at William Hill to go undefeated. Can we slow down with the hype train? 2 years ago, what do you have? 7 or 8 McDonald's All-Americans, and Coach K couldn't get out of the second round. Michigan Nova under 139 down to 137. What a performance. Beeline might be the best, Teddy. Doesn't matter who they lose and who comes in. They run out Nova on the road. The game was over early.
Sure. And Nova's a team that is, we talk about graduation losses. Nova lost everybody. But Michigan came in with a chip on their shoulder, started strong and just got stronger as the game progressed. Bayline, we give them credit. And the Wolverines, they certainly don't look down right about now. That being said, it was a statement game for Michigan, and their power rating might be a little bit high moving forward. Not sure the Wolverines are going to cover every point spread by 30-plus points like they did last night with that blowout win over the Wildcats.
SMU over 141 to 144. That was a 98-65 final, and I wanted to put this in there. Radford, plus 12.5 and plus 650 on the money line, won at Notre Dame. Good for them, 63-60.
Plus 650 on the money line. You're going to see a handful of those cash in early season play. They get fewer and far between as the lines makers get better at what they're doing. And, of course, as teams start to get into midseason form. But the Irish weren't ready to go last night. Radford moneyline backers cash at the plus 650 price.
All right, here we go. Big game breakdown, 4 key games. Starting with Notre Dame and Syracuse from Yankee Stadium, 11:30 a.m. on NBC. The Irish are 10.5 and 65 the total. I had a sharp guy, Paul Stone, who's won many contests in Las Vegas, one of the best college football guys there is. He says Syracuse is the most overrated team in the country. They're top 15 in the committee rankings. I guess they beat NC State, and that's just about it. I know, Teddy, you were on them week 1 against Western Michigan, although they had all kinds of problems stopping them in the second half. You got to love Dungy in that offense, and Babers is doing a great job. As you had that preview in that game that Thursday night against Western Michigan saying Babers is going to have a good year here in year 3. So far, so good. Gave Clemson a scare, although Lawrence got hurt in that game. But I'm concerned here with the Irish. They're the better team. They'll be able to move the ball. But the schedule, they got San Diego to take on Navy. Then back Chicago, they take on Northwestern. Then at home to take on Florida State. If they're going to go undefeated, they're going to have to work for it because now they're in Yankee Stadium, New York, and then they have to go cross-country and finish the job at USC next week. Can they do it?
Yeah, and this is legit neutral field. There will not be any crowd edge for Notre Dame here. Syracuse will have plenty of fans in attendance. And in one way, I agree with what Paul Stone said, because when you grade out Syracuse player by player, they don't grade out well against against Notre Dame. There are size problems. There are speed problems. You know, when you look at Notre Dame, plenty of NFL talent on that roster. You look at Syracuse, there's a dearth of NFL talent on that roster. But we've seen this Syracuse team more than once give upper echelon squads a real battle. We certainly saw it earlier this season in Death Valley against Clemson when Syracuse went down there and gave the Tigers everything they could handle. Remember, they beat Clemson at home last year. We know that Ian Book's coming back. Ian Book's a stud. The numbers really strong. 75% completions, almost 9 yards per pass attempt. That's pretty good numbers for a Frosh. But as you know, Paulie, as the season progresses and as Notre Dame keeps winning, the pressure just ratchets up another notch and another notch and another notch. And I'll tell you this, Dino Babers and the Orange, they're not going to take this game. They're not looking at this game anything other than a potential W. The idea of, well, we can compete and hang out for a while and see what we can do. Reading the local papers from Syracuse, that's not what the Orange are expecting in this ball game. They're expecting or intending, they don't want to hang, they want to win.
Well, there hasn't been a scare since that Pitt game. They take care of Northwestern. I guess that got hairy for a second, and then Book had the touchdown to put them up 10, and then the blowout win against Florida State. You also have to evaluate this team. You got to throw out the first month, even though they had the impressive win against Michigan at home, because you make the quarterback change, and you also get Dexter Williams back, and he's been awesome. And he had a big, strong performance behind that offensive line last week, and a great season for Dexter. They are 15th in scoring defense, allowing 18 points per game as well. So as I said earlier here, if you're anti-SEC, root for the Irish. We don't want to see two from the SEC. If they 2 games left, if they can win this and go undefeated and get in the playoff.
Sure. I mean, look, Syracuse is averaging 44 points a game. Eric Dungey is a stud. This is not an offense that can only work against the lesser defenses that they face. And let's not forget, Syracuse, they're 2 plays away from being 10-0, literally. They lost by Clemson by a single score. They lost in overtime against Pitt in a game that they had essentially and kind of let get away. So we're not talking about a team that anyone has been able to beat by margin this season. Although, again, when you talk about step-ups, Clemson was certainly a step-up. This is a pretty big step up, too. And the one thing that Notre Dame doesn't have, Paul, they don't have this great statistical profile that everyone loves and that forces the wise guy money on the Irish every week. Their stats are solid, but they're not, nothing jumps off the page. You're like, wow, Notre Dame does this really, really well. You tend to see a lot of betting market support for the team with elite numbers on one of the 2 sides of the football. Notre Dame, good numbers, strong numbers across the board, but not the elite numbers on offense or defense that attracts all of that betting market support.
All right, so this is an under-the-radar game. Both teams are ranked. Texas at home against Iowa State. Texas is only 3, 46.5, 5 o'clock Pacific. It's only on the Longhorn Network. Herman, 13-22 and 2 ATS as a favorite. We want him as a dog, not a favorite. 17-7 Texas last year. Great job by Campbell and Iowa State. They started 1-3. They're now 6-3 straight up, 6-3 ATS, and they need 2 wins in conference and a West Virginia loss, and they will play in the Big 12 title game. Unbelievable, but they're going to have to do it without Montgomery, who suspended the first half for hitting that Donnybrook against Baylor. I know he apologized on social media, but that could be a big loss.
Yeah, and you nailed it, Paulie. This Iowa State team that Iowa State was never considered a contender in the Pac-12 in any preseason prognostication. This was a team that was competitive last year. People liked Matt Campbell, kind of as an up-and-coming head coach, but no one, myself included, and I liked Iowa State, no one thought Iowa State was going to be in this position right now. 2 wins and a West Virginia loss, and they get another shot at the Sooners. And, oh, by the way, they gave Oklahoma a pretty good game the first time, lost by 10, but it was a competitive contest throughout. However, you talk about the loss of David Montgomery, and that's kind of a big deal. For the first half, Montgomery, a big component of what Iowa State wants to do offensively. They do a lot between the tackles. But you talk about Herman and his situations as a dog. Let's talk about a value equation here, because Iowa State does have a statistical profile that the wise guys like. They love this Cyclones defense. And Iowa State's off 2 big, bad blowout wins, Kansas and Baylor. From a value perspective, Texas off West Virginia and Texas Tech, 2 tougher foes than Iowa State. And you might think that the price is a little bit cheap for the Longhorns at home. It feels cheap for Texas, but as you mentioned, Paulie, Texas not a team and Tom Herman not a coach. We love him as a dog, as a favorite. He has not been a moneymaker. And Iowa State, that team's no joke on either side of the football. I keep hearing rumors, Matt Campbell to Ohio State next year, taking over for Urban Meyer. I don't know if there's any validity to it, but that's what I keep hearing.
All right. Got to get Urban Meyer out of there. Unbelievable. Okay, here we go. The national champs, 22 in a row, Central Florida. They have won with this long winning streak. Game day is there, 5 o'clock Pacific on ABC. 7. They're laying 7. 60 is the total. 44 points per game. Milton's accounted for 29 touchdowns. They have the number 3 offense. Now, it's not the same team as last year that thumped Auburn in the bowl game and beat Memphis twice and also beat South Florida. But this is going to happen. With a small school like this, you lose your coach to Nebraska, and you also put 3 guys in the NFL from defense. One of them was a first-round pick, and Griffin went to the Seahawks as well. Fickell's doing a great job. No doubt about it. They deserve to be ranked. They're 9-1. Excellent job. But I'm concerned about how Cincinnati has looked on the road. Week 1 is big dogs. They went to UCLA and won, but Spate got hurt in that game, and UCLA was having all kinds of problems. Brand new system. I know, Teddy, you were heavy on Cincinnati in that game. They went to UConn. UConn's terrible, okay? Went to Temple and lost, and then went to SMU and won in overtime, 26-20. Now it's a big step up against a great quarterback, one of the best quarterbacks in college football, and that they're going to be fired up with game day there. And also something to prove to the committee as well. It's like, hey, we haven't lost a game in 2 years, and we're only number 11 in the rankings. If they can get this game, I think that'll be 4 wins. 4 wins over teams with a winning record. So still, they can prove the haters wrong and the doubters that they'll be out in full force here with game day coming to town. I'm excited for this matchup and see how Cincinnati measures up with that good defense.
Sure. I mean, look, UCF, the win over Pitt, and a blowout win over a Pitt team that could win, that could win their side of the ACC this season. That's not a joke of a victory. You have the win over Temple and Navy. Navy's not having a good year, but certainly the win over Temple, the double-digit win over Temple, stands out to me as a strong performance. The win over Memphis, and on down the line for UCF. And yeah, you lose Scott Frost. Josh Heupel's come in there, and he's done extremely well as a first-year head coach. Of course, it helps to have Mackenzie Milton behind center. Milton, once again, putting up monster numbers, the dual threat. And this UCF offense it's scary. Lots of big play potential. Number 3 offense in the country when it comes to yardage. And, of course, that's the key for UCF. They get the quick strike touchdowns, the big play touchdowns. Been real good for over bettors, been real good for UCF bettors. But the strength of Cincinnati is not offense. If this game's a shootout, the Bearcats are in trouble. They're methodical offensively. The QB play, I'll call it decent, a game manager. Not taking shots downfield in every other play. Cincy wins because their defense, the number 6 defense, Luke Fickell, a defensive guy. He was Urban Meyer's defensive coordinator, and a team that brings it on the defensive end every single week. I haven't seen anyone light up Cincinnati's defense yet this season, but much like we talked about with Syracuse and Notre Dame, you grade out the personnel. Boy, Cincy's overachieved. Personnel-wise, this team does not have the size and speed that UCF does. And when you talk about how much is a home field edge worth when game day's in town, look at Washington State a couple weeks ago, where game day doesn't come, and then all of a sudden they show up. There's a huge bundle of energy for the players, for the community, for the fans. That matters in this game. That is a part of the handicap with UCF getting the ESPN guys to come to town. That's a big deal and may make this point spread warranted in a game where, look, since he's played great, they have overachieved. They are not, an 11-12 win team. UCF might be.
Yeah, I think UCF first half is a good play. I agree with you there, and I think it will be a shootout, which is not work for Cincinnati. Last year, it was 51-23 in the third quarter, and then the game was called early. It was one of the worst beats you're ever going to see. The game flew over the total in the third quarter, but you couldn't cash the ticket. 7:30 Pacific, ESPN, Washington State at home against Arizona. Can Washington State finish 12-1 and get in this discussion if there's chaos? Oh, that loss when they got screwed by the officials that Friday night at USC. So they're 9-1 ATS and 9-1 straight up. Mustache Ginsu Minshew doing a great job and coming off the this is a different Washington State team because they play defense. They beat Colorado 31-7. I know you might be concerned about the spot, even though they're at home and on national TV, because the Apple Cup is on deck the day after Thanksgiving. Tate has been better the last couple of weeks, and all of a sudden, Arizona. I like this angle, too, from Mark Lawrence. Bet on these teams that are trying to become bowl eligible. Arizona's sitting on 5 wins and also still have a shot in the Pac-12 South, believe it or not, because they beat Oregon and Colorado their last 2 times out. And the offense has played up. They blew out Oregon a couple weeks ago. That's what we expected from the get-go with Arizona and Tate.
Yeah. Both these teams coming off wins over Colorado, comfortable wins over Colorado, but Arizona had the week in between. They had a bye prior to this game. Advantage Arizona, especially when you talk about a first-year head coach and a quarterback who's had injuries, and now he's had extra time to prepare and a little bit of time to heal up those injuries. That matters. You talk about the look ahead. I think it is a look ahead spot, a legit look ahead spot for Wazoo. They got the Apple Cup next against Washington. That's a huge game. And coming off a big, the big road win where they're slapping the mustache on Mike Leach's face after the game, which was a lot of fun to watch and a lot of fun if you had a Wazoo ticket last week. But I worry about this spot for the Washington State side. And here's Arizona. They were 3-5. Everything was falling apart. And then back-to-back wins and a bye. Khalil Tate coming off his best game of the season. 5 touchdowns passing against Colorado. And now extra time to prepare. We know what Khalil Tate is capable of doing when going. That being said, we like this Wazoo defense a fair bit. More than a fair bit, Paulie. It is a defense. It's a defense that has the Cougs in position to win a Pac-12 title. Yeah, Gardner Minshew's going to get all the hype. And the mustache, you have to get the hype with that. But from a defensive standpoint, it's as good as anything we've seen at Wazoo at any point during the Leach era. And Arizona, they're no slouches defensively either. I wouldn't be surprised if this is a relatively low-scoring affair.
I hear what you're saying, but this is why it won't be a letdown spot. They got beat 58-37 last year. They got carved up and embarrassed. So the defense has been spot on much of the year, and I think they come out with a big effort and get ready for the showdown. And very winnable game against Washington, who's been a major disappointment the day after Thanksgiving. And the last 4 between these two teams have gone over. But that leads us to money time, play of the day, under 353. Washington, Arizona under 62.5. You saw the low-scoring game at home against Cal. You saw they held Colorado to 7. It's a good defense. And they also have been chewing clock on offense as well. It's not this 1-2 play offense bombs away like we were accustomed to with air raid with Leach in the past. Good defense, grind it out, maybe some weather as well. The late game coming up Saturday night. We'll get to all the NFL and all the key games coming up on Friday and all the key stats and recap. We got 4 football games tonight and everything going on. And great job by the voters. Get rid of these artifacts and relics. Congratulations, Jacob deGrom, Cy Young. 20-1 at some shops before the season. 29 of the 31st place votes. Only the second pitcher since 1913 to have that kind of season, to have a sub-2 ERA, 250 strikeouts and less than 50 walks. Great job. You can't control run support and win-loss. That's a team stat. Pitcher has nothing to do with that. Great job there. Low Shack in the Bag coming up next. You've been watching SportsBit, all the betting news you didn't know in less than 20 minutes. I'm at Real SportsBit on Twitter. He's at Teddy_covers. Enjoy the games. We'll talk to you tomorrow.